Okay, one more. When you mention timing of the whip, is there a time to tap relative to the hind footfall? Yes, definitely. Yeah, we definitely want to create and support the horse in the rhythm. When a good example, still until today, Lombardi has some issues with the transition coming from the piaffe to the passage. And because he sits so much in the piaffe itself, and yes, I definitely help him a little bit in the footfall here and there with my aids, and here and there in the training with a gentle tap with the whip to create a habit that no matter what we do, we're going to keep a two beat. We're going to keep a diagonal pair of legs moving. Only if the horse moves in a diagonal pair, we're going to create a two beat. So there's no doubt that I would use the whip to create a rhythm, and I can also create sometimes when I want a little bit more engagement of the left hind leg. I touch my horse when the right hind leg is on the ground, because the next step is going to be the lift of the left hind leg. Yeah, so that's a very good question. Again, it becomes very technical at that point. It becomes very sophisticated, but the answer would be yes. I definitely support the footfall.
I think one big piece that's missing in a lot of training, a lot of dressage training, I do a lot of clinics, and I find a lot of riders, and not just training first level riders, a lot of FEI riders don't know which leg the canter starts on. They don't know when the legs are working in trot, and so when the inside hind is on the ground, they're kicking it off the ground. They're asking for the canter on a young horse at totally the wrong time, and so the horse always takes the wrong lead. They don't understand the walk aids. So I think we could spend a whole day on equitation, but if you don't know those things, if you don't know how the horse's legs work, and if you don't know when you should at least basically use the aids for walk, trot, and canter, then you need to go find someone who can teach you those things, or you're never going to get to the point that you know which leg is doing what during a canter pirouette. Carl McCullough was like so wonderful for that. He taught me so much about, I mean, which legs where, you know, and do this and do that, and it's just an incredible education. So those things are important. I see a lot of incorrect timing, asking for the flying changes at the wrong time, and the horse has no chance, and then of course the horse always gets punished.
Yeah.
For it, which is not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's interested in that type of, the real technical part of the aids and which aid influences at what time, what one leg, there's no other school that teaches it better than the Spanish riding school. It's a really fabulous way of getting really technical about it. I personally think if you have to, in the show arena, if you still have to think about all those little things, it becomes way too complicated. To be honest, that would be way too much for my little brain, I'll tell you that. Yeah, but it becomes very subconscious later on.
Yeah, it's like any sport. When you first start tennis, they tell you the first thing you do is turn, and then you swing, and then you step, and then you finally hit. And you do that over and over and over until your body just reacts. It sees the ball coming, and you don't think those things. But dressage can be the same way. The problem is, if you practice it wrong, then it takes longer. They found in Japan it takes 5,000 repetitions to create a habit when they did an experiment with gymnasts. So if you've practiced something wrong 5,000 times, bad news is you've got to practice it 5,000 times the right way, and that's a lot of changing things. And so if you have a bad habit, if you sit crooked, you have to subconsciously say, every time I pass RSVP, every time I think about me, I think about my position, and you always do it at those same spots. So you start trying to repeat the correct feeling, because again, it has to become a reaction, and that's what takes time.
Yeah, and I don't think that's any different for the horse. If we do many times a bigger pirouette, and the horse picks up a very positive habit of doing it in such a way, then we have a much better chance of this particular pirouette sinking into a system, instead of doing many times a pirouette, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and the rider not being really in charge of the pirouette. And Janet always talks about my pirouettes, but it's honestly the way you set it up in the training, and the horse really learns to do it right, and it becomes a habit.
He's being humble. He's the pirouette king.
I don't know.
But it is the practice and the confidence of the horse. I mean, you can see many times that the horse is afraid because they lose their balance, and horses are, you know, they leave, they run, they get faster, they do all those things when they're afraid. And so if they don't have confidence in the rider, then they're going to try to save their own ass, right?
Absolutely.
So, okay, I have one more question. It was when we were talking about one horse with the lateral suppleness, would a snaffle bridle have been better than a double? For me, I think if I'm going to work on the lateral suppleness, the snaffle is the bridle I would pick, because I think the double bridle, if the horse is correct, you should be able to do very little with it and get the same reaction. And I think if you're trying to supple a lot laterally, that curb rein and the curb bit can get in the way and sometimes cause not the right reaction from the horse.
Yeah, I agree. Again, if you can get everything done in the snaffle, and if you can do a whole Grand Prix test without a spur and a snaffle, that's fabulous. But what I would discourage everyone from accepting is if the horse learns to take advantage of the situation. At the end of the day, we have to be effective with our aids. And if the horse gets numb to a leg without a spur, or if the horse gets severely strong without the double bridle, I personally don't see the benefit of that. I'm not a fan of telling everyone to ride in a double bridle, and a horse should be in a fourth level frame before we introduce the double bridle. The double bridle should not be used to create a fourth level frame. Yeah? But I'm being very honest with you, I had 6-year-old horses that were extremely strong when I got them, and there's nothing I could have done without the double bridle. But if the double bridle if I would have used the double bridle just to hold the horse, then again I'm creating even a bigger problem. But the double bridle was momentarily used to be effective, and then clearly releasing afterwards. So,
yeah, you know, again, we can't sit here and say you must always do this or you must always do that, because sure enough, just as soon as we say that, there's always an exception. I mean, we are dealing with a live animal, and people, I mean, things change, and we're constantly having to adjust and change things. So anyway, we hope you enjoyed today. We did. And thank you again for all the riders. They were great. And the organizer of the lovely farm, Randy, we appreciate being here.
Thank you.